Welcome to our how-to video on how to play electronic banking Monopoly. Many of you may remember the earlier edition of Monopoly, which was patented in 1935. But as times change, so does the game. The biggest difference between the old and the new is instead of playing with cash, you play with electronic debit cards. We will discuss this more later in the video. Other updates include new game pieces, houses and hotels, and the game board itself. Although the names of the properties on the board are all new, the game plays the same. The electronic banking Monopoly game can be played with 2 to 6 players. First decision to make is for each player to choose a game piece. After the banker is chosen, each player chooses a color-coded debit card, and the banker adds $15 million to each player's card with the electronic banking machine. Usually, players roll one die to decide the order in which they play, with the player rolling the highest value going first. The first player rolls both dice to determine how many spaces they will move. The player then moves their piece the number of spaces that are on the dice. If all this sounds familiar, it's because gameplay follows the traditional rules. For example, if the player lands on a property that is not owned, then the player can buy it from the bank. If the property is already owned, then the player pays the appropriate rent. Either way, all charges, credits, and transfers are handled through the electronic banking machine. Even though the properties have changed, such as the railroads having been replaced by airports, and the utilities being replaced with the internet and cell phone services, and the cash having been replaced by the electronic banking machine, the goal is the same: to buy as many properties as possible, create as many monopolies as possible, and win the game by bankrupting the other players. And now, with this modern edition, you can wheel and deal your way to a fortune with the swipe of a card.